U.S. during the 1920s was a time of spending and investing. A new term called prosperity will be introduced and be the defining characteristic for the era. Prosperity basically means being in a state of prosperous, also known as to have wealth or great abundance of. This would be the first time that the middle class would be able to invest in extra luxuries rather than just survive and get by. During the 1920s, stocks were a huge thing as lots of people would invest in whatever form of stock they can. Most of the middle class would buy stocks through loans, and that is how political cartoons would come into the picture. Political cartoons in the 1920s were used to grasp people's attention with the thought of prosperity. A great theme for these political cartoons would be prosperity and how it benefits the average U.S. citizen. Such as the case with the political cartoon The Farmer's Predicament, which emphasizes how prosperity allows the industry to be able to flourish while making farmers and agriculture business to suffer. Another political cartoon is Watch Your Step, where Los Angeles Times cartoonist Edmund Gale would compare the U.S. in its time of prosperity to that of ancient Rome and how successful the empire came to be in history. Even different parties would use political cartoons in order to get their point across using prosperity. Republican cartoonist Charles Henry Sykes created his cartoon Prosperity Black, in which the Democrats would depict in being against prosperity an easy way to turn people against them, as prosperity was a household term and it was the most positive thing one could think of. These political cartoons would go on throughout the decade, however, most of them would have the same theme of prosperity.
Newspapers became popular at the start of the 20s because of some very entertaining people. Will Rogers had the famous line, "I never met a man I wouldn't like," which flooded the newspapers. He started writing columns, and using his popularity, he became a famous writer. In a little bit of time, the production of newspapers changed when Henry Luce launched the Time magazine. This changed the era of boring titles to interesting narratives. There was no shortage of fun narratives when Al Capone became famous. This big mob boss never missed the headlines, especially when he started an illegal alcohol business and states that he's not in the murder game. There was also the stock market crash, which was huge news as well. At the end of the 20s, William S. Paley created one of the biggest news stations, which is CBS. He did this by purchasing a lot of advertising for his father's company. And when the sales skyrocketed, he bought a chain of news stations when he later changed to CBS. That is still a news station today, so he was very successful.
What people call the Roaring Twenties was a time of economic success after World War I. Advertising at that time reflected the wealth of the nation, and science was going towards the golden age. Shown on the screen at this moment are some of the ads that were shown on billboards around the city. Also at this time, advertisers were figuring out which got people's attention and what didn't work. They started making enthusiastic ads that would attempt to sway even the most stubborn purchasers. Companies were also trying to invent new things to get people to buy from the stores, thus many things such as refrigerators, radios, and canned foods came into the scene during the 1920s.